Before you hear this story, understand one thing. Some families bury secrets. Others become them. And then there are the ones born in places where sunlight never reaches. Not because of the trees, but because the land itself refuses to remember what happened there. Tonight, we are heading deep into the forgotten spine of Appalachia. A place locals won't hike, won't hunt, won't whisper about after dark. Because in 1889, a mother and her two sons did something so unnatural, so unspeakable, that the entire ridge was abandoned in a single night. Not because they died, but because something else was born. And it's the only story in these mountains that even the oldest folks fear to tell. Welcome to Forgotten Remains. The wind in Hollow Ridge never blew straight. It twisted, bent, and circled back on itself, like it was carrying secrets it wasn't allowed to drop. People said the land was cursed long before the Hollow Ridge brothers were born. Long before their strange mother built her cabin deep in the folds of the Appalachians. And long before anyone whispered the words, "Those boys, they didn't just love their mother. They belonged to her." The story begins with a single scream, one that echoed all the way down to the mining town below. Not a scream of pain. A scream of arrival. Something had come to Hollow Ridge. Something that should have stayed buried in the mountains. The woman they called Maeve. No one knew where Maeve Hollow came from. She appeared in Appalachia in the winter of 1862, barefoot, wearing a torn black shawl, carrying two newborn twins wrapped in burlap. Their eyes were already wrong. Too focused. Too aware. Too quiet. Some swore she wasn't from any town. Others whispered she came straight out of the mountain caves, carried by something that leaves no footprints. But everyone agreed on one thing. She wasn't looking for help. She was looking for land. Her land, and she found it at the top of the ridge. A crooked patch of earth no one dared to settle. Miners said the soil there pulsed if you put your ear to it. Hunters claimed the trees bent away from the spot. Children refused to even look up toward the ridge. Maeve didn't care. She built her cabin there with her own two hands, and the boys grew up inside it like shadows. The brothers, Elias and Silas Hollow, didn't attend school. Didn't come to church. Didn't play with other children. They worked the land, hunted the woods, and spoke only to Maeve. Locals sometimes spotted them at dawn, moving in perfect unison like two bodies controlled by one mind. Their faces were gaunt, pale, drained. Their eyes carried the same eerie calm Maeve had the night she arrived. By age 16, rumors spread that the boys rarely left the ridge, that they obeyed their mother's slightest gesture, not with fear, but with devotion, a devotion that wasn't natural. Then the whispers started. Whispers about a ritual, a ceremony deep in the cabin, about the night the boys married Maeve, not as sons and mother, but as bound servants in some ancient mountain oath, a ritual older than Appalachia, a binding older than blood. The miners who said it were drunk, or terrified, or both. The midnight visitor. One night a trader passing through the mountains claimed he saw lantern light inside the hollow cabin at nearly midnight, so he crept near. Curiosity always being the first step toward disaster. What he saw through the cracked window turned his stomach. Maeve standing at the center of the cabin, hands raised, eyes rolled white. Elias and Silas kneeling on either side of her, heads bowed, arms crossed over their chests as if pledging themselves to something unseen. Something behind Maeve. Something taller than a man. Something too thin to be human. Something that flickered like a shadow burning from the inside. The trader ran so fast he lost both boots in the mud. By dawn, he was out of Appalachia entirely, but the story stayed behind. The birth that broke the ridge. In the summer of 1889, Maeve vanished. No one saw her for nearly 4 months. The brothers patrolled the ridge alone, faces pale as ash, moving quietly through the trees, whispering to each other in a language no one recognized. Then, one night, the scream came. A scream that started high, dropped low, and ended in something no human throat could have produced. Dogs howled. Windows shattered. The ground trembled like a pulse. And then, silence. Until the brothers appeared at the edge of town the next morning, dragging a blood-soaked blanket behind them, their faces blank, their eyes wider than ever before. Inside the blanket was a newborn that didn't look like a newborn that made the sheriff drop his gun. The brothers said only one sentence, in perfect unison. "Mother has returned." And then they walked back into the mountains, back toward Hollow Ridge, back toward the cabin where Maeve had reappeared, alive but not unchanged. The hills began to move. After that night, the ridge was never still again. Lanterns were seen swinging in the woods with no one holding them. Low humming rose from the mountain, a sound like a lullaby sung backwards. Men working the mines heard knocks under the earth, as if something was crawling up, not down. And every now and then, someone saw Maeve, standing at the tree line, cloaked in black, holding the newborn wrapped to her chest, its tiny hand clutching her shawl like a claw. Her voice drifted through the wind. "Another is coming." And when the wind shifted just right, you could swear you heard two deep voices behind her. Elias and Silas, whispering the same words, over and over. The sound came first, low, dragging, like something heavy being pulled across damp earth. It slithered beneath the floorboards of the Mercer cabin, vibrating through the soles of the intruder's boots. He froze. His lantern trembled in his grip, the light flickering over the peeling wallpaper, the overturned cradle, the dried maroon stains streaking toward the back door. He swallowed. Something was still inside. Outside, the wind whipped down Hollow Ridge, carrying whispers that had no business traveling the night air. The trees bent as if bowing to something ancient passing through them. The man stepped deeper into the abandoned cabin, trying to steady his breath. The lantern illuminated deep claw marks along the walls, fresh, not more than an hour old. Then the dragging stopped. Silence thickened so fast it felt like the room was holding its breath. A faint tapping rose beneath the floor. Slow, muted. Then, faster, like knuckles drumming frantically from below. The man spun toward the sound just as a voice hissed upward. "Don't let her out." He stumbled back, heart slamming against his ribs. The voice came again, shaking, terrified, barely human. "She's hungry." A sharp crack split the floorboards and something white, bone-pale, impossibly thin, shot upward like a spear. The man screamed as the boards exploded outward. The lantern fell, glass shattering, fire leaping across the dried straw on the floor. From the darkness below, a skeletal hand gripped his ankle and pulled. His final scream was swallowed under the sound of the collapsing floor as the Mercer cabin burned behind him, flames eating every trace of what had happened, except the claw marks carved deep into the beams. Far up the ridge, the Hollow Ridge brothers paused mid-stride as orange light flared behind them. Roland smelled the smoke first. Elijah tasted it on the air with his eyes half closed, like he could sense more than the fire. And the woman between them, their mother Lorna, lifted her head slowly. Her eyes glowed faintly. Not from the fire. From something else entirely, she whispered, her voice soft but heavy with command. "They found the old house." Elijah stepped closer, his face dead and unreadable. "We knew they would." But Lorna wasn't looking at him. She stared down the mountain, toward the burning cabin, toward the place she once called home. Behind her eyes was something colder than grief, something ancient, hungry, and patient. "They think the evil started there," she murmured. "But they don't understand." Her voice cracked like wind through rotted wood. "It started long before that house." Days later, the townsfolk whispered about the charred debris that used to be the Mercer cabin, about the missing trapper who'd gone inside, about the claw marks investigators found preserved in beams that shouldn't have survived the fire. But what terrified them most wasn't the destruction. It was the tracks leading away from it. 3 sets of footprints, 2 belonging to adult men, and 1 belonging to a woman, except her prints were wrong. The shape was human enough, but the stride, far too long, far too heavy. As if the woman weighed twice what she should. As if something else walked in the same skin. Deputy Warren Briggs stared at those tracks for a long time, chewing the inside of his cheek until blood filled his mouth. He didn't dare say the words aloud, but they echoed in his skull. Something walked out of that fire. And it wasn't fully human anymore. He followed the trail until it reached the tree line. Then, the prints vanished. Completely. Just as Hollow Ridge always did, swallowing the truth whole. Warren shivered. Stories about the Hollow Ridge brothers had always circulated in hushed tones. Odd sightings. Twisted silhouettes. Strange cries echoing after midnight. But the rumors about their mother, those people didn't dare repeat anymore. Yet Warren's grandmother had whispered a warning to him once, the kind you only gave to someone you loved. Don't follow a Hollow Ridge woman's footsteps. She'll let you feel human until she doesn't need you anymore. Warren didn't believe in superstition, but he believed in evidence, and the evidence told him something alive had walked out of the Mercer cabin. Something strong. Something that dragged prey beneath the floor with a single pull. Something angry. Far into the woods, Roland Hollow Ridge crouched beside a creek, washing blood from his forearms. The water carried pink trails downstream, swirling like smoke over stone. Behind him, Lorna stood barefoot on the rocks, her tangled hair hanging over her face. She swayed gently, as if listening to voices only she could hear. "We need to move," Roland muttered. "They'll be searching." Lorna turned toward him with a slow, unnatural pivot. Her neck cracked, but she didn't react. "Are you worried for me?" she asked, her voice too calm. Roland stiffened. "No. I'm worried for them." Lorna smiled. It wasn't a mother's smile. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly how much fear she could cause. "Good boy," she whispered. Behind them, Elijah emerged from the shadows carrying something wrapped in canvas. It dripped steadily onto the dirt. He dropped it at her feet. "We can't stay in these woods," he said. "People talk, people wonder." Her eyes flicked down to the bundle, then to the sky, then back to her sons. "Then we take a new home," she said. Just like before, the brothers exchanged a look. They knew what before meant. They knew what she was planning, and they knew no one could stop her, because Lorna Hollow Ridge wasn't simply disturbed or dangerous or evil. She was something the mountain had shaped in secret, something fed by generations of isolation, superstition, and darkness. Something old, something growing stronger. Warren Briggs didn't sleep that night. He paced his kitchen, replaying the autopsy report of the man lost in the cabin fire. Except, it wasn't a fire death. The man's bones were cracked inward, as if crushed by immense pressure before the flames touched him. His ankles were shattered, snapped as if something had yanked him underground. And lodged inside his ribcage, they found something that didn't belong there. A long, black hair, not his, not from anyone known, and unnaturally thick, like it came from something neither fully human nor fully beast. Warren dropped into a chair and pressed his palms over his eyes. What in God's name was he dealing with? His hands shook as he lifted the hair again, holding it up against the lantern light. It seemed to shimmer, almost pulse, as if alive. And for one impossible moment, he smelled smoke. And lilies, and something sweet and sickening, like rotting fruit buried under fresh flowers. He dropped the hair instantly, because he recognized the smell. It was the scent described in every old Hollow Ridge folktale. The scent said to cling to women who came back different. Warren grabbed his coat, his gun, and a lantern. He needed help. He needed a plan, and he needed to go higher up the ridge, before whatever walked out of that burning cabin decided to come down again. Far above him, on a ledge overlooking the valley, Lorna Hollow Ridge stood in the moonlight. The wind blew around her, bending in strange directions as if avoiding touching her. Her eyes glowed faintly again, not from fire, from something growing inside her, something restless. She pressed both hands to her stomach, inhaled, and whispered with a voice not entirely her own. "It's almost time." Roland froze. Elijah stared. Lorna smiled wider. Much wider. Wider than a human mouth ever should. And the brothers realized then, their mother wasn't just changing. She was becoming. And whatever she was becoming was no longer bound by the rules of men, or mountains, or nature itself. The sky over Hollow Ridge turned the color of bruised flesh as Warren Briggs climbed the mountain trail. His lantern cast long, shaking shadows behind him, but the trees ahead swallowed light like they were thirsty for it. Every few steps he found signs, broken branches, deep footprints, claw marks carved into bark. Something massive had come through these woods, dragging itself forward with purpose. But what froze him wasn't the tracks. It was the silence. No crickets, no wind, no night birds, nothing. Like the mountain itself was holding its breath. Warren gripped his gun tighter. He knew he wasn't just tracking the hollow-eyed brothers now. He was tracking the thing that commanded them. A soft rustle came from the trees to his left. He swung the lantern around and nearly fired. A woman, filthy and shaking, staggered into the light. Her dress was torn, her feet bare and bleeding. Her eyes were sunken, but desperate. "Help," she whispered. "Please, she's coming." Warren grabbed her arm. "Who's coming? Who did this to you?" Her head jerked in a violent spasm. For a second, her pupils widened unnaturally, like something inside her was trying to push through. Then, with a sob, she rasped, "The mother, the one who ate the fire and came out wrong." Warren's blood ran to ice. "Lorna Hollow Ridge." The woman nodded, trembling so hard it looked like her bones might rattle loose. "She took my husband, dragged him into a hole, said he'd make a good first meal." Warren swallowed the bile rising in his throat. "What direction did she go?" The woman pointed up the slope. "No, you don't follow her. She hears footsteps. She hears fear." Warren tightened his jaw. "I'm not here to run. I'm here to end this." The woman's voice cracked. "You can't end her. She's not a mother anymore." Before he could speak, she grabbed his coat and whispered 3 words so faint he barely caught them. "She's nesting now." Then her eyes rolled back. Her body went limp, and Warren realized something horrifying. Her pulse was gone. She hadn't stumbled out of the woods alive. She had been dead for minutes. Whatever walked behind her had kept her moving. Higher up the ridge, in a clearing blanketed with moss and fog, Roland and Elijah stood over the cave entrance. Their mother was inside, humming a lullaby that echoed through the mountains like a warning. Elijah's hands shook as the sound vibrated through his skull. "We shouldn't be here," he murmured. "She's changing too fast." Roland swallowed. "She said we're all part of this." Elijah stepped closer to the cave, voice hollow. "That's what scares me." Before Roland could answer, the ground beneath them trembled, sending ripples through the moss. Small stones rolled downhill, Birds, what few remained, burst from the treetops, fleeing toward the distant valley. Then came the cry, a choking, guttural howl that didn't belong to anything earthly. Both brothers staggered back from the cave mouth. Inside, the humming stopped. The mountain held still, and then Lorna's voice floated out, soft, shaky, horrifyingly tender. "Boys, come meet your brother." Roland turned pale. Elijah backed away, shaking his head in panic. "No, Lorna. Mother, please don't bring that thing out here." His words died. A hand emerged from the cave. Huge. Wrong. Long, spider-like fingers curled into the mud, pulling something massive toward daylight. But the hand wasn't monstrous in the way a beast's claw might be. It was pale, human-shaped, but stretched too far. Skinned in places. Veins black as tar, Elijah screamed. Roland dropped to his knees, and Lorna crawled out behind it, no longer upright, her limbs bending like a wolf's, her face smeared with blood and soil, her hair tangled with roots. Her smile was ripped too wide, stitched by something unseen. Her stomach was torn open, but not bleeding. Inside was something moving. Warren Briggs arrived at the clearing just in time to see her raise her head toward the moon and whisper, "It's born of the ridge, born of me." The creature behind her crawled forward, pulling itself into the open. Warren gagged. He couldn't process it. Couldn't rationalize it. Couldn't even scream. It looked like a newborn, but stretched into a grotesque adult-sized thing. Its limbs were long and folded wrong. Its eyes were lidless. Its skin was pale and translucent, like something only half-formed. And it looked at Warren, right at him. Then it spoke. But it used his mother's voice. "Warren!" He stepped back, shaking violently. Roland screamed, "Mother, make it stop!" Elijah fell to the ground, clutching his head, sobbing. Lorna tilted her head in a sickly twitch. "Brothers, go to your sibling." Roland and Elijah looked at each other, terror frozen on their faces. But something behind their eyes, some deep inherited curse, forced their bodies to move toward the monster. Warren raised his gun. "Stop!" Lorna turned, her neck cracking like snapping twigs. With a voice that sounded both human and ancient, she said, "You shouldn't have followed her footsteps." Warren fired. The bullet hit her square in the chest. She didn't flinch. She didn't bleed. She simply smiled. A chilling, corpse-still smile. Then, the creature screamed. The forest exploded with motion. Trees bent backward. Birds hit the ground mid-flight. Warren felt his eardrums rupture as he fell to his knees, blood dripping from his ears. Lorna rose, levitating inches above the ground, but her limbs hung limp like a corpse puppet pulled by invisible strings. Her mouth opened wider, 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 until something inside her throat began crawling upward. Warren fired again and again, 6 shots, emptying the revolver. None of the bullets touched her. They bent in mid-air like metal turned to water. She descended slowly, her bare feet sinking into the moss. And with a voice no longer human, layered with whispers that belonged to thousands, she said, "Hollow Ridge keeps what is born of it." Roland screamed as the creature wrapped its arms around him, bones snapping in a wet crunch. Elijah tried to run, but vines shot from the earth, wrapping his legs, dragging him screaming into the soil. Warren scrambled backward, gasping, slipping in the mud. Lorna turned her head with inhuman slowness. Her eyes glowed like embers. "You wanted the truth," she hissed. "Now carry it down the mountain." And with a flick of her hand, the world went black. Warren Briggs woke in the valley at dawn, lying beside the riverbank with his gun still in hand. No wounds, no blood, no sign of struggle. But something was wrong. He could hear whispering. In the trees. In the water. Under the dirt. Calling his name. The townspeople found him wandering the road, dazed, filthy, muttering about a mother who didn't die, and sons who weren't born right, and a creature that spoke with dead voices. They asked him where he'd been. He pointed toward the mountains, but Hollow Ridge was gone. Not burned, not collapsed. Gone. The entire upper ridge had shifted overnight. Trees uprooted, cave systems caved in, rock slides erasing every path, as though the mountain didn't want to be found again. People searched for the brothers, and for Lorna. They never recovered bodies. Not human ones, but sometimes, on fog-heavy nights, hunters swear they hear humming deep in the timber. A woman's voice, soft, tender, rocking something in her arms, and sometimes the humming stops, replaced by a child's cry, a cry far too loud and far too deep to belong to anything human. Some say the Hollow Ridge brothers vanished with their mother that night. Others swear the mountain swallowed them, not as a punishment, but as a welcome home, because places like Hollow Ridge do not give up their secrets. They grow them, feed them, raise them in the dark, until the dark becomes all they know. And if you ever camp near those old Appalachian trails, pay attention when the wind dies, when the forest goes still, when every living thing suddenly hides. Because that's when you'll hear it, a woman humming a lullaby. Soft, slow, rocking something in her arms, and if you hear the child's cry that follows, don't look toward the ridge. Don't answer. Don't even breathe. Some families should stay forgotten, and some remains were never meant to be found.